Aloha. I'm Jason Schwartz, your host here at the Neutral Zone, MauiNeutralZone.com. We're on KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. And you can find us up on YouTube, and you can find us at MauiNeutralZone.com. Today, I have a very special guest. Here we are in the year 2021. And when I started doing this show in 2018, seems like an eternity ago, we had this COVID thing and it stopped us from doing shows for a little while. And now I'm doing them remotely until the world reopens, if you will. I had done an interview of Sasha Lessin, and I realized that I am missing a whole really important part of Sasha's life, Janet Kira Lessin. Janet, welcome to our show. You're a very wonderful guest to have. Now, I know Sasha a lot of
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Good to have you here. I was trying to think of how I would describe you, or what area is what you do. You are obviously a loving support of your partner, Sasha, but you guys have been doing things over the years, and I thought I'd have you on to kind of be a representative of the focus that you like to take in your life, because I know you're a very powerful influence in that household. What are you doing these days? I mean, how would I describe you? I could just be pulling from the air, but I'd like to have you describe you.
I'm constantly changing. I'm reinventing myself all the time. Of course, COVID, you had to do something different. We were doing workshops and conferences and traveling the world, and we had switched we started out as a Tantra school. We got shut down by the county. We started doing polyamory conferences because we were working with the LBGTQ. It keeps expanding the letters, but yes, it gets long enough. But we were working with that community because we kept getting alternative clients, and we were always for the downtrodden and people who are being oppressed. So we started the World Polyamory Association, and we pulled together all the people. And I think part of what we did was instrumental in getting the gay lesbian marriages approved, because we're all working in conjunction with each other. And now when you tune into like Netflix, it's a different world. People are identifying as different orientations and genders, and so we've made a lot of progress. I started with Dr. Lessin, met him in 1997 at the polyamory conference in upstate, well, first in the one in California, and then we went to the one in upstate New York, and that's when we fell in love. We met in 97. I decided I'm going to move in with this man, and he invited me. I had discovered polyamory through going through a series of marriages, 2 marriages. By the time I met Sasha, he's my third marriage. The first 2 marriages ended up in infidelity, and I was just shocked by it all, and I'd seen it destroy many marriages, and so I started studying, relationships, and I've always been a counselor, but I started formalizing my education. And then when I met Dr. Lessin in 97, September 97, coming up my anniversary, I decided to join him in his community. He had a conscious community going here in Maui. There were a lot of the Maui characters, and Charles Muir was here, and Joan Hartfield was just changing her name to Hartfield, and Caroline Muir, and all these Tantra people kept coming to our house from about 97, I don't know, somewhere before COVID. It was somewhere about 2015, 2016. But we started to shift our focus because we were getting oppressed by the county. They didn't want us identifying as a Tantra community. So anyway, I won't go into the politics of that, but we said, okay, we must reinvent ourselves. Go ahead.
Let's see how our audience goes, because you use words. I want to make sure all our audience knows that polyamory means multiple partners in a relationship, or
loving more than one person in an intimate relationship. So, So most people identify as monogamous. A lot of people are single, but when they date date one at a time. But there are many cultures throughout the planet that are polyamorous, meaning more than one partner, polygamous, one man, many women, polygynous, one woman, many men. So there's different ways of doing relationships around the planet, as we know, looking at it all. So now when you tune into a lot of the internet shows, I watch a lot of Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that. Polyamory is pretty well known. You can see a lot of major characters just use word polyamory. So I guess it hasn't caught up with the whole world, but it certainly Hollywood has added that because they want to be politically correct when it comes to defining what kind of race or what kind of gender or orientation or relationship style you may be participating in.
It has made the world more complicated. We used to have a choice of male or female. Now we're male, female, and assorted other boxes.
Yeah, I don't understand the they, them, but I appreciate everybody trying to figure out who they are.
I'm always wondering.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
So am I. That's why I was asking, I guess. But so you met Sasha at you don't call him Dr. Lessin except when we're on TV, I imagine.
Yeah, I call him Dr. Lessin when I'm on TV because then people kind of respect him more.
Right.
And he deserved that. He worked hard to get that, and he's 81, so he's been doing this education over 60 years.
And he's a doctor of anthropology, I understood.
Anthropology and counseling. Well, he has 2 masters in counseling psychology. All these certificates, I can't put them up on the wall. There's so many postdoctorate certificates. He's a geek, a nerd. He loves to study. If it wasn't COVID, we'd probably still be going to, some educational programs. He never wants to stop.
When you say the county got a little too much in your face and wanted to direct your programs, is that what you're saying? They wanted you to?
No, they didn't want the Tantra temples to exist on Maui, so they basically attacked all the Tantra temples here and on the Big Island. I don't know what they did on Oahu, but they in Sedona, Arizona, and in Phoenix. So there was kind of like we tried to get it through RILUPA, which is a religious liberty. I don't know. It's an acronym for a law that was passed, which allowed you to have religious freedom and express yourself in your own way. But that took a lot of money to hire attorneys, so we let that go, and we kind of let go of all that stuff. The county was just attacking, and I won't mention other names, but other people on the island that had more money, they were able to fight it with litigation, but we got outspent. So we said, okay, I guess the universe wants us to do something different. So we went into the other aspect of what Dr. Lessin and I do, which is the anthropology. And so we started studying, the ancient, the History Channel has ancient aliens, or what do they call it? Ancient aliens. Yeah. Anyway, they go into how did humanity get to the earth, and what are their beginnings and their origins. And so right now we have all these digs that are going on around the planet. We have LIDAR, which can see underneath the oceans, underneath the earth, and we're identifying more of these ruins. And so what's the pieces are coming together that there was this global civilization that's much more ancient than anything we could ever imagine. And so, that was right down Dr. Lessin's alley. He was excited. I introduced him to Zecharia Sitchin, to a book called The Gardens of Eden by William Bromley. And I put it on the back of the toilet. That's where you introduce literature to men. And I just left it there. And then one day he came out, he says, "Is there more?" I go, "Oh yeah." So we went down, Borders was still there. We bought everything they had. He just started diving into Zecharia Sitchin, and we started traveling around with the Sitchinites. It's a group of about 200 researchers, and we met at these little mini conferences, went to New York, to Florida, California several times. And then he passed, Zechariah passed in 2010. And he asked Dr. Lessin to please pick up the umbrella. Now, I always refer to Dr. Lessin because he's got the PhD and I'm raised in a patriarchal, male dominant society. But I have the certification too. I went to Sitchin's thing and I'm equally certified as he is. But, I wind up my geek and I launch him, and then he can really wrap his head around the material on a major way. And then, we check each other and we have endless discussions about the topic. And so we produced 5 books on the Anunnaki. And there's 2 more if I can get a fire under his butt to finish. But, writing it's one thing, but putting it together in a format that you can publish is very tedious. And so I tend to do that.
Zechariah Sitchin, to our audience that may not know him, he was, I guess, a student of cultures and civilizations that came to our Earth. Is that where his focus was?
Right. He started in the 70s exploring the anomalies around the planet, just like Eric von Daniken in the 60s introduced In Search of Ancient Astronauts with Rod Serling. And they started saying, well, what are the pyramids? What's Machu Picchu? What's Stonehenge? And so there was a whole series, In Search of Ancient Astronauts, in the 60s in books. And then Zechariah, so that was the 60s, and Zechariah came around in, I think his first book was called The 12th Planet in 1976. So he got these cuneiforms and artifacts from over the planet. There was an earlier group than the one that I joined with Sasha, that they were actually traveling to Egypt, to South America. And so what they were finding, like in South America, they had these Olmec statues of large African-looking people. So they seemed out of place. They had these structures that were put together, which with huge stones that weighed tons, and which with such precision we couldn't do it today, just like the pyramid. So he was documenting all this, and he wrote about 11 books before he passed in October of 2010. And so he said to us, especially Dr. Lessin, please continue on not passing the torch, but please continue and create a educational program for the planet, because this information must continue. And it's ongoing. It's very popular. You can just put Planet X Nibiru in your search Google, and you will see pages and pages, thousands of references to it, and it's a huge movement.
Well, speaking of that subject, do you have a place for people to go to begin an exploration of that, or how do you approach this?
Oh, well, people? The first place to go is enkispeaks.com if you want to pull up that link.
Eki Speaks. I'm going to bring up that page. We're going to share for a second. Okay, and let's see if I can bring it up. Is that it? Can you see it?
Enki Speaks. You want to go to the first one. There it is, right there.
Well, Enki Speaks. There we go. So this is, now you guys, it's very funny. When I look at this picture, I actually bought an art collection on the rights to Richard Field's work. This is one of Richard Field. That's Merlin.
Yes, he gave us
the guy in the ocean, Neptune.
Yes, that's Neptune, Poseidon, and Richard Fields. We met him years ago. He used to do yoga in his studio, and he gave us several copies of his painting.
Yeah, he said, yeah, we should get him out there again. He has some really beautiful things that he's done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now you can see the site slowing coming in. There are pictures where there's a blank spaces. So.
Oh, I understand. You're like mine. I leave spaces. The pictures are still feeding in, is what you're saying. I'm just looking at all the different, there's so much here to explore. That'll be great for people. And the easy way to find it is ENKI, enkispeaks.com. Great. Okay.
Great.
So
there's a search. You can go in and look for different topics. And Dr. Lessin works on this. He's doing a lot on Facebook. I try to get him to put it on Eggy Speaks, but he's doing most of his work on Facebook. He has a huge audience, and there it is. There was the one that the interview that you guys did. Anyway,
yeah, I saw it flash by. Oh, well, who knows if we're exactly seeing the same thing? It's the internet connection has got its own brain. It's a funny thing sometimes.
Right. That's the way it works.
So
anyway, that's
now when I see you two like this, I think about this site because you guys have been doing, probably still are doing radio shows.
Well, I've taken a year sabbatical. I got involved with all these experiencers, people that had paranormal and UFO type encounters. There are literally thousands of people that have stories and books, and then we were doing the Anunnaki, ancient alien stuff, and we were doing conspiracy. But I took a break when conspiracy got really bonkers with this, attack on the. Hold on one second.
You're talking just conspiracy has become, I don't want to say fact, let's say it part of our day. There's so much going on, it gets very confusing and very unsettling.
It got really dark, and it infiltrated the radio field, and I didn't want to be participating in any way, shape, or form in supporting that darkness. So I just said, I'm going to take a break and clear my head and see who I want to interview. I just wasn't sure. Oh, goodness. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Life goes. I got you.
Okay. So I should have turned them off. Anyway, I don't ever get calls because I have pretty much everything blocked. But so I took a break from that. I am going to be doing some more shows next month. I'm really vetting the people that I'm interviewing, but I have an archive of over 1,000 interviews, and they're mostly just audio, but I put them all the way up on YouTube, and I have a Spreaker blog talk system. So it kind of goes out to, Spotify and all these different places. So we have a good portfolio of over 1,000 interviews with people from alive and dead from all walks. So I've been doing it since 2012, but I started being interviewed before that. So that was a big part of our lives. So
a lot of shows,
and I'm still doing that. I'll be doing my next show, I think the first week of October, with Barbara Jean Lindsay and with Elizabeth Anglin, and they're both first generation experiencers. So an experiencer is someone that's had some kind of paranormal or UFO contact. And there's a well-known researcher in the UFO field named John Mack, who started, he was a Pulitzer Prize winner, Harvard, I think he's Harvard professor. And in his psychotherapy regression practice, he started encountering people that had alien abductions. And he worked with Dr. Lessin for about 20 years. They met each other at the Stan Groff holotropic breathwork conferences. And so under Stan Groff, they traveled like 2 weeks every year to different locations, or 2 or 3 times a year to different locations in this first intensive certification program for Groff work. And so Dr. Lessin was, I think, the second group that was certified under Stan Groff. So anyway, very important piece of work because this is groundbreaking research. We have the first main story that broke in the world, basically, with Betty and Barney Hill. Have you ever heard of Betty and Barney Hill?
No, please tell
me. They were an older couple. No, they were probably normal age, 30, 40 something. And they were traveling in, I think it was Connecticut or anyway, they were one of the first biracial couples. And so they were traveling home from something and they got abducted by aliens. And so they didn't know what was happening, but their lives, see, I have to finish that. I didn't finish their lives got kind of turned upside down. So they subjected themselves to a series of hypnosis session to uncover what was destabilizing their lives. And they were separately regressed, and they both had encounters with extraterrestrials. And their story got published by Stanton Friedman. And then there was a series of movies made by them about them. So they were the first one that went public back in like 62 or 63. Wow. So people are, you can Google all this stuff. I'm not making it up. This is the field. It's a huge field of research, and people are trying to figure out what's going on. Now the government is saying that we have UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, and everybody's looking for disclosure. When is the government going to come forth and tell us about the alien presence on the Earth? And so we have the ancient aliens. They came hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they colonized this planet. We have that story, which is what Zechariah Sitchin covered. But we have the modern era, like who's been abducted by aliens, what's flying in our skies. And so people are trying to connect the dots from the past to the now. And they're still reporting. There's a group called MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, which has been around since the 60s. Project Blue Book was started in the 60s by the government. So people are trying to figure out what is this. But there's the other faction that doesn't want us to know, because apparently they have advanced technology way beyond what we're utilizing in our everyday lives. Like they have transport between planets, and it's it's hard to explain it because it's such a huge field. But there's a group of people that say they are in a secret space program, and they're called whistleblowers, like Snowden. Snowden came forth, and he was saying that he found in the computer when he hacked in drawings about these aerial craft that are, going to the stars, basically. So all this stuff is opened up. And so that's what I was doing with Aquarian Radio. I was interviewing all these people that had experiences, from abductions to I'm working in the secret space program. I'm a whistleblower. I just did 8-9 years of that. And I was doing up to 5 shows a week because there were so many people that want to be interviewed. And I was just basically, okay, you want to come on my show? Let's put you on the calendar. So I was really working my ass off, so to speak. And so, and I just put a pause in that because I realized that this other conspiracy part was being utilized to polarize us and kind of pit us one against the other. And then it got really dark, and it got ugly and mean. And we see it eroding. If you listen to the news, it's like, it's the anti-vax, anti-mask, polarity game. And it's not really kind, loving, or fun, what's going on now.
I don't know how that's going to resolve. It sure is dividing so many people that should all be loving and supporting each other.
Right. So if you scroll down on Dragon, this is all involved in my research. Let's see if we go further. I have a section I have to fill out this is a slider. I have to fill that out. But you go down and I have all these.
This, right? This one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to fill that out. That means there's a missing.
I understand. It's a carousel of images or whatever you'll put in there. Right.
Right. So I have to feature an image, and I have to get a large image with a lot of fonts for it to look like. But if you slide down, keep scrolling. On the right-hand side, you can see our books.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of them. There's
Dance
about
of
10 of them
Souls.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Dance the Souls, which is my part 1 of my autobiographical story of my experiences with non-human entities and paranormal. When I was a child, I grew up in a haunted house, so that all counts as experiencers. Now, anyway, if you scroll down a little bit more, there's a few. So if anybody wants to explore what I'm talking about in greater depth, here are the books that we wrote. They're all up on Amazon, and you can, if you click on the images, you can go through.
Yeah, I can see that. Let's make sure I get the website address correct. Dragon at the End of Time. right?
Correct.
.com.
Anki Speaks also has these images. I
And-
try to get these book links on every site,
Right.
and I've got to go do some work on this.
I'm gonna open it for a second just to see. So like
Yes.
this. So just by example, people can go to everything and find all about this separately. I get it. Great.
Okay. You click through to see, it's on Amazon. Okay.
Yeah. This is on Amazon.
I don't know.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, that's
well, I'm glad, because I know that this subject is the kind of subject that lots and lots of people are interested in. Is there any kind of formal, I'm just asking, any kind of group that is here to kind of greet them? There was years ago, I met a gentleman named Sheldon Nidle, Nidle. Did you meet him? Know him? Sheldon.
I've had Sheldon up here from right before I left. I brought him up for dinner. He and his lovely wife, and I can't remember her name right now.
Colleen.
Yes. Colleen, yes.
Well, this was years ago when I did interviews with him, and he was talking about being a group of people that were the reception team for the, I don't want to call them aliens, visitors of other race from Syria. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to go to his group. He was great. And I think he moved to California somewhere. And I tried to get him on my radio show, but he would never commit to that. So I don't know why. Well, he was retired.
I imagine they're still waiting, but they were a very interesting group of people. And like you, they're not speaking from a place of uncertainty. That's what I hear in your voice. There is no doubt you have so many people that have come and shared with you their experiences. It's past the point of, is this real or not? You're, I'm sure, after 1,000 interviews, very rooted in understanding there are so many things we don't know. That's really.
And I cannot give you the answer. I can just give you more mysteries. And I invite everybody to research and come up with their own, it's just like religion, where are you going to settle in that? Now, this guy here, Wallace.
Yeah.
You grew up. He is he's a traditional biblical preacher, scholar, and he looked at the Bible from the perspective of what if these were aliens. And so he has this he's got a wonderful website and series of radio interviews and videos on explaining the Bible from the extraterrestrial perspective, from the Anunnaki. So it keeps expanding. All these researchers come in and they add to this. Now, what this dragon at the end of time is about, I started doing my ancestry. I have ancestry.com. And as you go through the ancestry, you will see, well, at least in my line, I kept encountering royals. I mean, I've got kings and queens. I go back to Charlemagne, which is around the year 1000. And once you hit the royals, the documentation of who and what lived where and when and how is just phenomenal. I mean, they've got people's birth dates and deaths and a lot of them die of plagues. And so what I'm looking for, this is hard to explain, but in the Anunnaki story, they have stories of dragons and the devil and the gods and serpent and all this stuff. And when you look at the symbology that's in our ancestry, and you end up with these royal crests, and they have dragons in there. They have, I don't know if I could pull up to a royal crest. They hire a heraldry. When they went off to battle, they would decorate their shields and their breastplates. And then these things went up on their walls. And they kind of show which gods. The Anunnaki had about 900 gods. And the gods are basically immortal. And at a certain point, they had to go behind the scenes because they ended up having a series of wars and conflict within their midst. Nothing's changed. There's been war since the beginning. We're still acting out their wars. But they started dividing up the earth, and the Sodom and Gomorrah got nuked. That was actually nukes. If you follow this Sumerian story, that was a nuclear holocaust. They blew up Sumer, and they dispersed around the planet. And so Enki, who is our hero, this is the hero's journey, and the Campbell has the symbology of these archetypes, these heroes. You have Enki and Enlil and Nimba. Well, they are God and Satan. Whoever won the war was God, and the other guy was Satan, right? He was the adversary. So if you follow this track all the way through the ancients, and I track it back to the Northern European countries, from Germany, France, even Spain, a little bit of Italy, but all the way up to Ireland and England and Scotland. That's most of my genealogy. And within that, you can find the stories of the dragons. And there's a point when you go back in time, and this is literally going in my chart. I'm going back 14, 15, 16 grandparents. That's called your pedigree. You can lock into your grandparents going all the way up the tree. And I've stopped at Charlemagne on about 3 branches, and to let people understand, when you start going back in time, you're going to be related to, well, we're all related to each other, and we all have every DNA in us imaginable, right? If you go back to the story of Adam and Eve and the creation, but you're going to encounter your point in your tree where your grandfather is your uncle, is your cousin. So they're related to you in many ways at the same time. So you keep finding your ancestors, and they're all related to each other, because there wasn't as big of a population back in 500 years ago as there is now. So we really do have 6 degrees of separation in our DNA, in our genetics, and we're all related to each other. And we can go back and tie in our charts to the Anunnaki. So the story of the Anunnaki is alive in our bloodline. So this woman here is known as Melusine. And Melusine was magical. She could change into a mermaid, but her tail was like this, with the 2 fins. So the royals, I've tracked this down, the royals say, no, she wasn't a mythological being. We tracked down our ancestry, and we're very proud of having this shape-shifting reptilian person that could shapeshift. She could turn herself into a dragon, and she wasn't mythical. So there's a point when you do your tree, your genealogy, where all of a sudden you have run into Arthur, and you run into Jesus, you run into Mary Magdalene and her children, you run into the stories of the how when they came to the Britain, to the islands, there were giants. And then that ties in with the archaeological digs, and that ties in with the conspiracy, because people are hiding these giants in the Smithsonian had. If you look in the what do you call it, 1800s, in the ancient newspapers and stuff, you see all these pictures where they got these skeletons, and they have an axe as tall as a human, and so we're looking at all these things, and we're going, well, there is a conspiracy. There's a huge cover up of information on what really has been happening in this planet, and you can find it in your own genealogy. So now that's another part of my research, and I'm networking with researchers all over the planet, because the number after porn, what the number 2 for research is ancestry, is genealogy. There are millions and millions of people studying genealogy, and as you are correcting your tree or going in and it corrects it for all the millions of researchers all over the planet, and they will not let an inconsistency go. We've got people that have boots on the ground. They're going into little shires and churches, and they're finding the records that are thousands of years old, and they're bringing it back, and they're tying it into the database. And so we're solving the mystery, which Zechariah Sitchin began at 76. Like, who are these people that are our grandparents? And we're solving it through our DNA. And now they can take their DNA samples, and you can go back through your genetics 35, 40 generations to see who you are, in your DNA, within your own body. Okay, go ahead. Pausing for air and question.
Wow, I'm just listening. It's very fascinating. So this kind of work, it's almost like I don't know where to begin. The first you have to kind of realize when you're studying, you have to be open to breaking the thing that society has for us, a traditional view. Do you see, I'm sure you've seen that in yourself. When do people suddenly go, this is absolutely real. It's changing the way I think about man, changing the way I think about where we're going on this planet. Like, are these things going to be making a difference in whether the Earth still survives with humans, with all that's going on with the planet? Are there solutions this close to us that could solve these problems from an outside source? Or are we going to have to handle it here? Yeah, I always wonder, how do the aliens and the humans interact? That's what you were talking about earlier. There was a movie a few years ago. I thought of it as a comedy called Mars Attack, which was all kinds of celebrities. Jack Nicholson was, I think, president in this one. And the Martians get off, and they're trying to be nice to them, and suddenly they shoot and kill people. Oh, no, that was an exception. Is there any kind of tracking of humans and aliens working together towards solutions? Are these things that we should be positioning ourselves to receive? It's a big question.
That's a great question. Let me try to unpack that.
Okay.
The answer is yes, and all the above. There appears to be a battle for the soul of our planet on some level, and that's what people are talking about in the conspiracy level. But there also appears to be a faction that loves humanity, that sent people like Jesus and Buddha, sent these spiritual teachers came down into the human level of existence, and they incarnated here, and they walked among us, and they lived lives, and they left behind messages. One of those characters is Enki. So you commented on the Poseidon Neptune image. He loved humanity so much. He is the creator of Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens sapiens. He and his sister Nimma and Thoth Nagashita, which is Thoth. They have different names, depending on what period you're looking at, but he is Thoth, and they are geneticists, and they created this. Let's call this an avatar. This human form is an avatar, one of many forms in which souls can come in and have incarnations. And so he's here to help support the ascension process for us to awaken and become conscious. So that's the original battle between God and Satan. There's a part that wants us to stay in the matrix, enmeshed in the disinformation and information, and confused and programmed and unconscious, and acting out through religions and wars and racism and sexism and just unconscious. All these things we see going on now are it's unconscious. Yeah. These people are saying, I'm woke. No, you're not woke, you're unconscious. And for you to hate your neighbor and act out and do these horrendous things to each other is unconscious. So I'm inviting everybody to get conscious. And conscious means love. It's basically love. Is that kind? Is that loving? Is that supportive? No, well, don't do it. Stop doing it. And do everything in your power to stop doing it. So it's kind of preachy, but that's my conclusion. So I think what's happening now, studying, so another thing I started out when I was 12 years old with Gene Roddenberry. You know who Gene Roddenberry is, correct?
The
Star Trek.
creator of Star Trek, right.
He was apparently an insider. He was a whistleblower. He had access to the alien presence on the earth. He couldn't tell the stories as if they were real. So he made Wagon Train to the Stars in the 60s. Westerns were popular. So he said, well, let's do Star Trek. Let's do a Wagon Train to the Stars. And so he was introducing a lot of the concepts, and he did the best he could. And I think he died at his early 60s. So it didn't last for long, late 50s, early 60s. But he left us a legacy. And then Star Trek became Star Wars. And I liked Star Wars, but I didn't like how Star Wars was so violent, and it just kept getting more and more violent over time. And if you look at our media, it just went from, I don't know, it's always had shooting, but it just went to how you can. One day I went to a movie with my boyfriend at the time, wasn't Sasha, and I said, I can't do this anymore. Do you realize how many people died in the 2 hours that we watched this movie? I said, I can't be unaffected. So I stopped watching violent movies. And I basically, when I moved in with Sasha in 1997, I stopped watching television because on some level I realized that I was allowing myself to be programmed by this negative agenda. And I think that helped me clear my head, and I dedicated myself to research. And Dr. Lessin has never watched television. He said, I didn't like television. When I was a kid and television came around, I said, Dad, let's go out and throw a ball. I don't want to watch this stupid stuff. It's stupid. So what's happening in Star Trek realm, and I've just tuned into this, is they have 2 new series coming out. One is returning to so all the fans were complaining, like, this is wrong. This isn't the original spirit of Gene Roddenberry, and we've lost our way. How do we get it back? So the 2 series that were kind of true to form were the first Star Trek series, which lasted 3 years, and the Next Generation, and then there were a couple others, Voyager. The earlier ones were true to form, and then the later ones got hijacked. So what they decided to do is they're bringing back Picard, not Picard. They bring back Picard, which was Next Generation, and there's a character called Q, and Q was like the adversary. He was very devilish, right? For Picard had this. Now they're coming back and they're saying, well, Q's helping humanity evolve and become conscious. So there's something that's being reintroduced, and humans learn their stuff from media, from science fiction, from stories. We get a lot of our input and our morality and how to walk in the world and how to be. So it's very influential. And then the other one is there was a character in the first Star Trek. Let me get his name. Pike, Captain Pike, and he was pre-Kirk. You know who Kirk is, right?
Captain Kirk was the ran the Enterprise, and the captain before him was Pike, or he was an old leader before. Mm-hmm.
So they're going back to the roots of Star Trek, and they're reintroducing Pike and a lot of the characters from the first. Of course, the original actors are a lot of them are dead. Kirk, what's his name? William Shatner's in his 90s now. So he might do a cameo, but he's not going to be the captain. So anyway, there's some hope that they're going, because we're really hungry for that energy. Because I was 12 when Star Trek started, and I was part of the revival. I went to all the conferences. I was there on my 21st birthday, and they said, we finally got the contract back. We're going to be doing the movies. So there were 20,000 strong in New York City in February 6, 1975, when I turned 21. And there were another 20,000 trying to get into it was a hotel. It was their last thing. They were going to tear it down, and they just let us go wild. We had Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, J. Allen Hynek, and Gene Roddenberry, and they were up and they were talking about our future and where we were going to. And it was you're a hippie. I was a hippie. This is our bright and shining future.
Yeah.
And then it got hijacked with 911. And all of a sudden we were on this negative timeline. And I just watched, if anybody, I don't know, it gets political. Watch Vice about Cheney. It's like, oh my God. I'm not going to go into it, but it's like, our timeline got hijacked from this Star Trekian utopian reality where we would have cures for all diseases and cancer and space travel. This was, we got robbed. We got robbed because we were heading there, and now we're in this COVID crap. And I know there's a way out. And Enki, the character Poseidon, he's got a trident. He loves humanity, and he's Aquarius. See, there's something behind. We are entering into the age of Aquarius. So I remain hopeful, but boy, I can only watch, a half hour of news, but I do pay attention because this is not the future I imagined when I was.
So what are we going to see in the future? When we hear about all this conflict, I keep thinking, am I going to see a Jesus-like character floating down, and is the world going to drop this negativity, or is it going to be this struggle? I just am trying to, how do we navigate out of such a dark period and bring people back together in a loving way? What do you think?
Well, we can always start individually. The more of us that are kind, level, loving, conscious, it's kind of like, lighting a candle, lights a candle, lights a candle. So we can start now. There's things we can do every day. We can put out positive things. We can like positive things. We can say, I've just turned off all that negative stuff. This is a really good movie to watch. Yeah, this is uplifting. So stop watching the fear porn. I call it the fear porn. But Enki did. Okay, so back to the Anunnaki story. They were fighting among themselves. Who gets to rule when? Who gets to be king of the earth when? And it was they created astrology to mark the passing of the earth and the solar system through the cosmos. And so when the ages would shift, then they would have the different gods, because when they first came to the earth, there was only 3 or 4 of them. But they eventually ended up with 900 by having people come down from Nibiru and by having children. So they had second, third generations. They were having problems reproducing themselves. They had become basically pretty infertile. So if you had a fertile man or woman, when they had children, they really celebrated the birth of a child. And so I think that in some higher source, like God's source, right, in some higher sense, like from the God, God's source, not the human story of Jesus and the gods, that level, but the higher universal consciousness, creator of all. They worshiped the creator of all. They knew there was a higher power above them. So this higher power intervened into what they were doing on the earth. And then they became conscious and aware that there was a higher being. And the story talked about this guy named Galzu, which is just like Q in Star Trek, a being that had total awareness of the totality of existence, of where they came. We come into form and we go unconscious. We have no idea who we are. But some people, through meditation, working on themselves, they start to remember who they are as an eternal being. So Enki had a greater awareness than we have. And then he became aware when they realized that this guy Galzu came in. They basically didn't allow the Anunnaki to leave. And this guy made up a story. He says, if you leave the earth to Enki and Nima and the gods that were here, you're going to die because you've been on this plane of existence too long in the earth atmosphere that you can't go back to Nibiru. And they believed that. So that meant they were trapped here, and they acted out in Sodom and Gomorrah, which ended up in almost a total annihilation of everything, because they didn't realize how powerful nuclear weapons were. They had no recollection because they had developed nukes tens of thousands of years ago. Anyway, it's a long story. It gets convoluted. But the bottom line is, what they're saying is, it's Enki's turn to rule. Enki did not get to be, it wasn't his age yet, but he is the one who loved humanity so much that he sent his only begotten son to the earth to save humans. He saved us in the flood. He gave Noah the instructions on how to build the ark. he, created Homo sapiens. So in the end, just to cut it short and go to the point, we saved each other because they were sterile and they were losing ground and they were not reproducing. So this hybrid species of human and Anunnaki, all of us are human and Anunnaki. Everybody alive today is human and Anunnaki. It's in our DNA, and I'm going to prove it with my group. That's, tying it in with our own family trees back to the Anunnaki. So his turn to rule. That's what the rock opera, the Age of Aquarius, was about. It's Enki's turn to rule. Now, he loves us, and his wife is Nimma, which is Mary Nimma. They're going to come back. That's all we have is this promise. It's written in Sumerian, it's written in Akkadian. It's a story that when it's my turn to rule, I'm going to come and put it right. So, okay, hurry up, Enki, get down here.
Wow,
I don't know exactly. Yeah.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, this story, it came from somewhere, but it ties together that transition of how do you go from nothing to where we are now, and how do we save the earth? We're going to basically have, according to this story, a gigantic moment that is going to change consciousness on this planet. All right, because of
that's what it seems. It seems that will happen. Now, in the meantime, it doesn't mean you stop and just let the earth blow up. See, the other thing that Dr. Lessin's been researching is that there's always some things incoming, and the Bible and all the Atrahasis and all these ancient texts have stories of fire and brimstone, volcanoes going up. So we apparently are creating or accelerating our own apocalypse, and we really need to get our shit together. What I think they're looking for, they don't want to interfere with us on a micro level because we don't grow, evolve, and become conscious. They're hoping that we evolve and become conscious, so we unify and put together a group effort, and we can deflect the incoming bodies coming in from the space that in the past have created things like Noah's flood, and also what was the one, the Egypt flood, when they were going through the Red Sea, Moses. That was another mini event where things were coming in from space and making earth changes. So we have periods of huge earth changes. There was a time where one of the volcanoes erupted, and a lot of it's the influence of the astronomical bodies. They come in and they pull and push on our planet, and they create havoc. So apparently this one volcano, we were down to 20,000 humans, right? And we were able to recover, and now there's 8 billion of us. So I think what they want us to do, based on all the studies, and I can't explain it all, is to figure it out and unify. So there's a thing called Kardashev's scale of consciousness. It's a scale where they see, are you level 0 civilization, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we are a level 0. We do not have a unified government. And that's the other thing, the conspiracy theory people, it would be bad if we had one world order. But in Star Trekian reality, you weren't invited to be in a federation unless you had a unified government, some kind of representation for the whole planet, meaning you guys got your act together and you're no longer fighting each other. You're thinking as one mind. You figured out the problems of your planet as one mind. And so that's, I think, what we need to do. How we get there, it seems like a big job. But remember, the Berlin Wall came down in one day, right? We were there. You and I were there. We watched it. And so these shifts in consciousness can happen, but we really need to start. And the good thing is, and we do have the internet, so these concepts can go out there and like little seeds and start growing and growing and growing, and we can see a shift. And I see that happening now, even amidst all this stuff, because I think on some level, COVID is a wake up. It's a catalyst. You gotta do something, because if you look in the past, our ancestors kept dying from these diseases. They don't go away. They just go round and round. They originally got unleashed in Sodom, or in the wars, the Anunnaki wars. It's biochemical warfare. And so a lot of these things were just dormant for years under the ice, we're burning up all these forests. They started a couple of years ago, burning up in the Amazon. It's like, oh, you can't do that without ramifications on all levels. And part of it was unleashing, the Arctic ice, unleashing this biochemical warfare, which was out because the Anunnaki at one point realized there's too many of them, not enough of us. And so the Anunnaki can be hurt and killed. And so that's why they went underground. They created the priesthood and the kingships. Enki didn't want to just cut us loose because we would go back to a barbaric stage. So he introduced civilization and culture. And he had these, originally the concept was the kings and queens and the priests were to guide us. But, everything, humans know how to pervert everything. So that's become very perverted. And, but the original, if you go back to one of the archetypal stories which conveys the original intention of Enki when he started all this, the demigods, which are the hybrid children. So he would reintroduce his own DNA by mating with humans. So you have all these stories of some kind of incubus or some kind of magical being, or even Enki himself coming in and mating with humans. Well, that put this special DNA, which was greater intelligence. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between a true royal and and us and human, but I think it's genetics. If they got samples, they could probably figure out what's the difference is. Anyway, that's an aside. So he set up Camelot. I'm gonna say just Merlin Arthur, the concept of Camelot was how it was intended to be. That we would create these golden ages. And as you know, we, in the 60s, we had Kennedy, and he was they called that the new Camelot. Well, we've lost Camelot, but we can get it back.
Every time I'm hearing it, I'm thinking to myself, it can't be anything but super fascinating to those of us who know so very little about this. And your information seems to be an accumulation. Is that what you mean by continuing what Zechariah Chicha did? You guys are bringing this information together, integrating it into a very understandable. You speak very eloquently about it, and I'd love to be hearing more. I'm sure our audiences would. What's an easy way for them to get in touch with you? What's the best way for you?
You can just write Janet Lessin at Gmail, JANETLESSIN at gmail.com.
Okay, and you go up to these sites.
Conversation.
And Pardon? These sites that are up there are the Enki Speaks, and what was the other one? An Elephant in the Room?
Elephants in the Room. It's kind of political. If you're a Trump person, you won't like it. But I'm about consciousness.
And Dragon.
Dragon at the end of
time.com.
And Aquarian Radio, we've got, and that's got a YouTube, Aquarian Radio. You can go and listen to 1,000, it's about 2,000 hours of interviews since about 2012.
Well, I sure thank you for coming here on our show. I wish our show was longer. I'm fascinated. I could just hear more and more, and thank you for opening my mind to this so much more than I really knew. It's fantastic. I hope you'll come again.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the tip. And that's what Dr. Lessin and I do. We're a couple nerds, and I think there's a way to do this. That's all I want to leave everybody with. There's a way to do this, and you can start today by being kind to your neighbors, being kind to your pets, kind to your spouse and your children. Just every moment of every day. Just when you find yourself being short or harsh, just stop and change the channel. I'm going to say that again, kindly.
Right.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer. What a That one came through to so many of us. I'm glad. Now we have to raise it up and actually do it.
Yes, yes. Live it, live it. We already know the answer. We already know what to do. We just have to start living it. Yeah. And that's what I dedicate myself to. That's why I stopped. I really stopped all the input. There was too much, too much. Stop and just listen to yourself. Take your shoes off, put it in the dirt. Just listen to the nature around you. And you know, if you reconnect to source, not to the little God, not to the religion gods, but go above to source, then you know it all anyway. But just bring it into, that's bringing heaven into earth. You can, each and every one of us can bring heaven to earth. So I know it sounds preachy, but it's like, it's so simple. It's so simple. Yeah. So
well,
okay.
I hope that our conversation today is turning on a lot of people, and that what we're doing here helps it grow, especially when you boiled it all down to something that everyone should relate to, that love is the answer. And
Yes.
thank you for coming on the show today. I hope you'll come again. This was really terrific today.
I will. Yeah, maybe both of us, me and Sash, we can have the two of us.
I'd like that.
That will really blow your minds.
Well, audience out there in the world, today was a terrific show. I hope that you appreciated it like I did. Janet Kira Lessin, you're a terrific guest and a beautiful person. I very much appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. So out there in radio and television and internet land, thank you for joining us again here at the Neutral Zone. You can listen to this show again, MauiNeutralZone.com, or put in Jason Schwartz and Janet Kira Lessin into the internet search engines, and up it will come very soon. Very good. Thank you, Janet. Thank you for being here. And thank you, our wonderful audience, for being here too. And we will see you again. Blessings and aloha. Aloha.